Hello and welcome into the Addison to 35th podcast. I'm your host for this Cubs episode, Ryan Herrera. And right now, we're coming off the Cubs' first homestand of the season. We're recording this Thursday night, so they do begin a West Coast trip starting tomorrow. But the Cubs finish the homestand. They took 2 of 3 from both the San Diego Padres and the Texas Rangers. They're 9-6 on the season, first in the National League Central, and they have a 600 winning percentage, which evened out to 162 games is about 97 wins. Now, I'm not saying the Cubs are going to win 97 games this season. They kind of got to keep proving that, but they have performed well to begin the season, and we know that the Cubs' April schedule, March-April stretch of the season is the toughest month, I believe, of any of the 30 MLB teams, any month for any of the 30 MLB teams. So to be going into the second half of that stretch of games with a 9-6 record, first in the National League Central, it's a pretty good start for the Cubs. It's a start when we're talking about the Cubs having playoff hopes and people, fans and Cubs people having playoff expectations. Like this is the start you needed, and could have been better. There's obviously a couple games in there that the Cubs had a couple wins maybe in their grasp and ended up turning into losses, but the Cubs did come out of their first homestand with a 9-6 record, and that's they faced the Dodgers, they faced the Diamondbacks, the A's, the Padres, the Rangers, a bunch of good teams in there, good pitching, good hitting. They have a 9-6 record, and coming off this rough series, honestly a rough week weather-wise in Chicago at Wrigley Field, to come out of that feeling pretty good about where the Cubs are at right now, 15 games into the year. That's good. We're roughly 10% of the way done. One more game, and we're about 10% of the way done with the season. So I think you feel pretty good about where the Cubs are. Still some things to clean up, of course, but feeling pretty good about where the Cubs stand and where things could go here for the next 90% or so of the season. To start off, though, I do want to talk about Kyle Tucker, the Cubs' prized offseason acquisition. Got him in a trade with the Astros for Hayden Wesneski, Isak Paredes, and Cam Smith. And Kyle Tucker. Well, first of all, he started off this week. Monday was named the National League Player of the Week. He is having a stellar start to his Cubs career. We'll take a look at some of the numbers. Entering Thursday, a 208 WRC plus, which is tied for ninth in baseball, 1130 OPS, which is seventh, a 19.2% walk rate, which is seventh, a 9.6% strikeout rate, which is 13th. And those ratios between walks and strikeouts is just kind of insane. But that kind of tells you who he is as a hitter and the plate discipline and being able to put the ball in play, being able to be a contact hitter. He's everything is advertised. That 322 average, if that's your thing, is 25th in baseball. But he is hitting barrels at a 19.2% rate, which is 19th. His average exit velo and his hard hit percentage isn't that great, but this tells you that he's at least getting the barrel on the ball and making things happen. He's got 5 home runs, which is tied for third, 16 RBIs, tied for second, 16 runs, which so far is the most in the majors. And he even has 3 steals, which is tied for 13th. And then overall, as an overall value, according to Fangraphs, 1.2 wins above replacement, which is only behind Corbin Carroll's 1.3. Again, those stats are entering Thursday, so it doesn't include all Thursday's games. Some of them are still being played, but yes, overall stellar start to Kyle Tucker's Cubs career. Was named the National League Player of the Week on Monday. And, we keep talking about Kyle Tucker's being in a contract year, right? Like the Cubs traded for him with only 1 year of control over him. He could hit free agency this winter. For me, that's a huge part of the discussion around Kyle Tucker. I understand, and you can't talk about Kyle Tucker's season without talking about that. But I do also want to say that like Cubs fans should try to enjoy Kyle Tucker while he's here. Like the whatever happens in the future, that will eventually happen, right? Kyle Tucker will eventually sign a contract, whether it's with the Cubs or whether it's with a different team, whether it's an extension with the Cubs in the offseason or re-signs in the offseason or goes into free agency and signs with another team. Like that will happen eventually. But right now we're in April. It's April 10th today, and Kyle Tucker has been everything that Cubs fans could have hoped for. He's been exactly as advertised as this one of the best hitters in baseball, realistically. And I do think fans should also, while knowing that's part of the discussion, try to like enjoy Kyle Tucker while he's here because he may not be here for long. But right now, he's giving Cubs fans, he's giving the Cubs themselves, honestly, um, really great baseball to watch, a really great hitter to watch. And he's no slouch defensively, obviously, a former Gold Glover. But that bat has just been everything the Cubs could have hoped for and more. And it's been a really really strong start. It's been fun to watch him play baseball, watch him at the plate because they're I will say, like, considering the teams he played with, the teammates he had in Houston, probably was underappreciated and maybe even underrated in baseball. Now that he's the man in Chicago, there has been no real transition period. He's kind of hit the ground running, even after a slow or a bad showing in spring training. It was kind of one of those things where we said, don't worry about it. Spring training isn't all that. Is kind of take it with a grain of salt, especially with a guy who's a few years into his career now, and Kyle Tucker, who has the track record of very strong offensive performance at the big league level. And he's showing that, yeah, he's kind of proved that right. Like, you shouldn't have been too worried about him when you saw a slow start in spring training. But obviously, well, I do want to point out he's obviously not the only one contributing to the Cubs offense. Like, Seiya Suzuki's right there behind him with having a really, really good start to his year. Michael Busch, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson are all having good years. And when you have at least half, if not a little bit more, of your lineup hitting as well as those guys have, with Kyle Tucker and Seiya Suzuki leading the way they're hitting, your offense is going to be really good. You can have those guys at the back end of the lineup struggle a little bit. And we've seen that. I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong hasn't gotten off to the best start offensively, but he's providing immense value with his defense. Matt Shaw, we're seeing the guy making his big league debut, his first foray into the major leagues, and he's having some struggles at the plate. But I think that's one of those things where you can give him some time. Miguel Amaya has probably cooled off a little bit from where he was when we talked last week, but he's pitchers are still raving about him as a catcher behind the plate, calling games, all that stuff. And Carson Kelly's still his offensive numbers are still really good. So you combine those two, the production you're getting overall from the catching position, I think you feel really good about where the Cubs offense is. They have looked really good. Again, entering Thursday, a 120 WRC plus as a whole, which is sixth in baseball, 763 OPS, which is seventh in baseball, 12.4% walk rate, which leads the major leagues, and only a 19.1% strikeout rate, which is sixth lowest in baseball. They scored the most runs, 96 runs. Obviously, they've played a couple more games than some of these other teams, but they have 14 more runs than the second place team. I think that's the Dodgers. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they're right there. They're right there as one of the best offenses in baseball. And they've stolen 25 bases. And you're seeing the Cubs pretty much extend innings and steal runs by beating out regular routine throws to second base. Pete Armstrong's done it a couple times. I think Shaw's done it. Seiya's done it. Like, extending innings, making sure that that last out of the inning isn't happening, and making the defense have to make another play, or make the pitching staff have to make another pitch. And they're taking advantage of it, and you're seeing it the way the offense is kind of humming along right now. I know, Wednesdays wasn't the best day for the offense as a whole. I think they only scored one run in that loss to the Rangers, 2 runs in that loss to the Rangers. But it was also, Wrigley it was a rough, as I said, a rough week at Wrigley weather-wise, but the Cubs offense is still kind of humming along, and that's really good to see, because I would say even with the Tucker addition, there were still question marks and still concerns over basically entering another season with mostly the same group that they've had over the last 2 seasons. Not all, obviously. There's newer additions over the last couple of years, but it felt pretty much, especially like the Seiya Suzuki, Ian Happ, Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, like those guys have been in the lineup for the last since 2023. And but any concerns so far with the offense have been kind of squashed the way the offense has performed so far, and against some good pitching too. They have played some good starting pitchers, some good bullpens, and put up some runs, and that's always an encouraging sign to see. Back to Kyle Tucker. Again, I mentioned his contract. He's got the last year of team control before he goes into potentially free agency this offseason. And I understand with all the extensions that have been going on recently, especially the Vladimir Guerrero Jr. contract, 14 years, $500 million. I understand Cubs fans just wanting the Cubs to get something done. I get it. I totally understand where Cubs fans are coming from. I don't think it's likely from Kyle Tucker's side, the way he's playing, he's 28 years old, the way he's performing, and with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. off the board as potentially a free agent this offseason, like he is the top of the free agent list this offseason. Like he could cash in. There could be a lot of teams bidding for his services this offseason. So I don't want to speak for Kyle. Like, talking to Kyle on Monday or throughout the homestand about, he's asked about his contract, and Kyle Tucker kind of says he's basically like not concerning himself too much with it, especially this early in April. He's kind of said things along the lines of like, I'm just here to play baseball, right? And that is what the Cubs brought him here to do, is to help him get to the playoffs this season. But he doesn't seem too concerned about it. I do know, Jed Hoyer has said any kind of negotiations or contract discussions they have with Kyle Tucker's camp, they're going to keep those internal. But he has said a couple times now something along the lines of like anyone wants a player like that long term. So you read that and you think the Cubs would love to have Kyle Tucker long term. Obviously, it's going to depend on a contract, on money, on years, and whether Tucker wants to test the free agent waters or not. But I would say the Cubs are in the camp of they would like to have Kyle Tucker long term. I mean, Craig Counsell the other day asked about Kyle Tucker and the way he's performed to start the year, and he said something along the lines of like, I hope when we get to spring training next year, Kyle Tucker's not going to have to play in those games, right? He was joking around, of course, having some fun, but then had an answer about the way Kyle Tucker's performed. Then a reporter followed up with like, so what you're saying is you think he's going to be in spring training with you guys next year? And Counsell kind of laughed it off and said, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. But I think the Cubs stance is clear. Like Craig Counsell, from that, I think you would obviously assume he'd want Kyle Tucker back next season, especially considering the way he's performed this year, but even just with the track record of being a star level bat. And so it's going to come down to what Kyle Tucker wants to do and whether the Cubs are willing to give him the kind of contract that it might take to keep him long term. Just for comparison's sake with Vlad, like I said, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is 14 years, $500 million. Tucker is 2 years older. He'll be going, if you were to sign an extension this year that starts next season or whatever contract he would sign in the offseason, that would be entering his age 29 season. So he's 2 years older. But since the start of 2019, which is the year that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. debuted, Kyle Tucker has a 144 WRC plus to Vlad's 137, and Kyle has 22.7 wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs, compared to 17.1 for Vlad. So just looking at those numbers, it's not a one-to-one, apples-to-apples comparison, but you're looking at a really, really good player in Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who is a first baseman, gets the contract that he does. Kyle Tucker is a couple years older, but has similar, if not better, numbers than Vlad offensively, and has won a Gold Glove playing a position that's not first base. He's playing right field. Like, I don't know what that contract's going to be. I don't, but it's going to be a lot of money. The Cubs still have not given up or given out a $200 million contract. Jason Hayward's is still in total value the biggest contract the Cubs have given up. So it's going to depend on if the Cubs, if Tom Ricketts and that front office, if they're willing to give out the kind of contract that Kyle Tucker is going to demand this offseason, especially if he keeps hitting the way he's hitting or just overall producing on both sides of the ball the way he is. It's going to be a lot of money. It's going to be well past $200 million. And the Cubs, just historically, have not shown that they're willing to give out that kind of contract. So it would be out of the Cubs' historic comfort zone, but he is the kind of player that this team needed to add this offseason and should be very, very interested and willing to give the kind of contract to keep him around long term. Again, don't know what's going to happen until it eventually happens, but it's going to be the discussion around Kyle Tucker until an extension is signed during the season or a new contract with or without the Cubs is signed in the offseason. This discussion is going to last for months now and until that is ultimately taken care of. But again, Kyle Tucker, National League Player of the Week last week, stellar start to his Cubs career, exactly what the Cubs have needed, exactly what the Cubs have wanted, and looking like he's going to be an insanely productive bat in the heart of that Cubs order throughout the rest of the season. So uh, good for Kyle Tucker. Congrats to Kyle Tucker for the NL Player of the Week. And we'll just, obviously just going to keep watching him play baseball. I assume the production is still going to be there from him throughout the season, and then just kind of keep monitoring what happens, whether an extension happens or not, or he hits free agency. That's going to be a talking point. It's going to be a storyline for Kyle Tucker throughout 2025 as we move forward. But on a tougher note, Wednesday morning, Justin Steele was placed on the 15-day injured list with left elbow tendonitis. It's retroactive to Tuesday, so the earliest he can come back is April 23rd. After that, 15 days would be over. Justin, it's tough because through Justin's first three starts, he had that 6.89 ERA, a 1.34 WHIP, and 5 home runs allowed. That was a start in Tokyo, start in Arizona, and a start in Oakland. Uh, just had his struggles with the long ball. Was definitely upping his ERA. He wasn't walking a lot of guys, which was a good thing. I think even in those 3 starts, he only had like 1 walk apiece. But the home run was an issue in those starts, and on Monday against the Rangers, he went out and he looked as dominant as he looked all season, far and away as dominant as he's looked all season. He looked more like the Justin Steele we come to know as like that's blossomed into the Cubs top of the rotation pitcher, 2023 fifth place in Cy Young voting, ace of the staff kind of thing, right? He went out against the Rangers again Monday, 7 innings pitched, scoreless, 3 hits, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts. And that's even with the cold weather at 34 degrees at first pitch. I don't remember where that ranks on the coldest first pitches of in Cubs history, but it was up there. It was cold one. It was cold up in the press box. I'm sure he was cold in the field. He was talking about trying to do things to just stay warm in between innings and stuff. And then, even to top on that, he comes into the post-game press conference with his son, and his son stole the show with his dinosaur little toys on camera. But it was a really good night for Justin Steele all around. And then we find out that he's going on the injured list Wednesday. We find out that he kind of came into, or that during the start Monday, he had been mid game, roughly around the 5th inning, kind of alerted Craig Counsell and Tommy Hotovy that the arm was tightening up a bit on him, but felt like he could still go out there. If it was the 5th inning, he would have completed another 2 innings. Looked good. But then he came back in on Tuesday, ready to work toward his next start. Told the medical staff that things were still tight for him, and obviously the decision was ultimately made to place him on the injured list. The way he talked about things, it sounded like he wasn't fully on board with the decision. Like he did, and understandably, I think it sounded like he just didn't want to go on the injured list. Like he felt like he could keep pitching, but it is an injury similar to one he had last September. I think it was actually the same diagnosis that put him on the injured list in September. It was only 17 days on the injured list for him overall. That one was retroactive a few days, so he ended up spending 17 total days on the injured list and was able to come back. I remember even then talking about Steele coming back, and at that point the season was basically over, and there were a lot of people out there that were just like, Justin, don't bring Justin back to pitch. Just end the season here. Let him get healthy and get ready for 2025. But I remember Steele and Counsell and the pitching coaches, and like they were all on board with if Justin is healthy, he's going to pitch. Justin wanted to come back and pitch. He did. Made 2 brief starts. Like I do recall, if I'm not mistaken, Craig Counsell kind of saying when he did come back that like, yeah, this is going to be a short start. He wasn't going to push him super long in the start, but Justin wanted to pitch, and the group as a whole was confident that he was healthy to pitch and wasn't risking any more injury or anything like that. So he did come back for a couple brief starts to end his season. And I think that was that was something as far as just going out and being able to make his last start of the season, however long it was, to be healthy enough to go out and make that final start. I think that was big for Justin, and so he did. And but now we come into this season again. He is now on the injured list. He is scheduled for an MRI on Thursday, so today. So we don't have the results of that MRI yet. I'm sure the Cubs, Craig Counsell or whoever will give reporters out in Los Angeles that information tomorrow. But so we're still waiting on that. Steele did kind of wonder, and we all kind of wondered, even Counsell sort of wondered, like how much the cold weather maybe affected the elbow, and whether the feeling in his elbow during the start was the elbow, or whether, or while he was in the start, not really knowing for sure whether it was the elbow barking at him or the weather was affecting him, or whatever that was. But ultimately, that may have played a role in him suffering this injury and going on the IL. So hearing Steele talk, hearing Craig Counsell talk about the injury, and Justin going on the IL, it seems like there's hope for a minimum stint or something close to it. It seems like there may be even a little bit of optimism, and that is obviously going to depend on the MRI that Steele gets, and because that's going to help set a little bit more of a roadmap. They're going to figure out what it is like specifically, and be able to attack it that way as far as recovery goes. So that'll set a little bit more of a roadmap. But there seemed to be some hope and some optimism that this could be a minimum stint on the injured list, which again, if that's so, it would be April 23rd. So that would be a pretty big deal for the Cubs if he is able to come back from that minimum stint. Again, he looked really good in his last start on Monday. We know as far as the rotation goes, the Cubs didn't. I think they added like Matthew Boyd was a good further like fourth or fifth starter addition, I think, and he's looked pretty good to start the year. But they didn't go and add that top of the rotation guy to go along with Steele or Shota in that top three, even JMO in the rotation. So losing one of your two best starters, at least on paper, that's a blow. That's a blow for the rotation, and they would want Steele, but you should want Steele back if you're the Cubs. You should want him back as soon as possible. Obviously, not rushing him, not pushing him. Counsell wanted to take that conservative approach because Justin had the injury previously, so he wanted to take a conservative approach and have him go on the IL. But there is some optimism there for a minimum stint. But as far as kind of how the rotation goes moving forward while Steele is on the IL, they'll need a spot starter on this road trip, whether it's Los Angeles maybe Sunday, or San Diego and on Monday. Those are kind of the Counsell said Sunday, Monday while he was talking. So it seems like one of those 2 days where they're going to look to give them that spot starter. Right now, Matthew Boyd is scheduled to pitch Friday. Ben Brown is scheduled to pitch Saturday, and the Cubs have a TBA for the probable for Sunday. So they could have Jameson Taillon pitch. I believe if he pitches on Sunday, that would only be on 5 days rest. Craig Counsell does like to give his starters, it wouldn't be 4 days of rest, that 5 day schedule. Counsell does like to find that extra rest day for his starters when he can, especially this early in the season. So if they do go with a spot starter on Sunday, that would allow JMO to slot in Monday, which would give him that 6 day schedule, 5 days of rest. And the same thing with Shota the next day, who would be in the rotation, lined up in the rotation behind Taillon. That seems like that. Assuming that's the plan, you're giving that extra day of rest to right now your top two healthiest starters, and then you kind of build out from there. That could be Colin Ray, maybe, right? He's stretched. He's in the bullpen right now, but he does obviously have major league starting experience. He is stretched out enough that he can give you innings, maybe not a 7-8 inning start, but he is stretched out to give them some innings if so called upon. So that could be a guy that you see make that spot start there. If the Cubs do decide to dip in the minor leagues, Jordan Wicks is obviously on the 40-man. He is in AAA right now. Tommy Birch of the Des Moines Register did tweet out earlier today that Jordan Wicks was originally scheduled to pitch after Kate Horton pitched today for the Iowa Cubs, and Wicks was was next in line on the probables for Iowa. But Tommy Birch said today that he is no longer on that probable list. So that's not saying the Cubs are bringing Jordan Wicks up to make that start Sunday or Monday or whatever day Craig Counsell decides. But it seems like the Cubs are keeping their options open. They're going to see how pitching goes the next couple of days in Los Angeles and figure out what they do need. What they do need once Boyd pitches Friday, once Ben Brown pitches Saturday, and just where their pitching kind of stands, how many relievers they have to use. Do they have to use Colin Ray? Right? Like that's what they're going to monitor. And so I'm assuming we'll find out maybe even after that Saturday game. Once like the Cubs have as much information as they can get, that's probably when we'll find out who will be making that Sunday start, and then they'll go from there. I did try to kind of do the math on this. It's again, there's some optimism and some hope that Justin Steele will only need the minimum stint or something close to it on the injured list. But let's just say he's not on the minimum stint. He may need some more time. We've heard it before, not specifically from Steele, but just in general in baseball, that when the injury happens, there's that optimism that it's not going to be long, and then things kind of stretch out. So let's just say Sunday is where they use that spot starter, right? And then Jamison Tyone would pitch Monday, and Shota Imanaga would pitch on Tuesday. Is that correct? Yeah. Um, Going from there, the Cubs could, if I did this out correctly, and sometimes my math isn't great, but I believe this is correct. If the Cubs go from there, they could get through May 2nd without needing to activate Steele or use another fifth starter because they have so many off days built into their schedule in April right now. They have, I think, well, they had one obviously today, and then like 3 or 4 more coming up in April. Like they have days where everyone's going to get a rest, like obviously assuming weather and all that kind of stuff. Like they'll have days, off days built into the schedule where they could kind of roll with a 4-man rotation and get to that May 2nd or get to May 3rd without needing Steele or or another fifth starter. And if that's the case, again, if the spot starter is used Sunday, Jamison Tyone would make 2 starts on 5 days rest and 2 on 4. 4 days is your regular 5-day schedule, 4 days rest thing. Again, Counsell does like to get that extra day in. So if he wants to build in that 5th day, Jamison Tyone, assuming, or not even assuming, but again, in the scenario where they go out and need or activate, say they activate Justin Steele on May 3rd, right? They need till May 3rd. They could go with Tyone would pitch twice on 5 days rest and twice on 4 days rest. Shota would pitch twice on 5 days rest and twice on 4 days rest. Matthew Boyd would pitch once on 5 days rest and 3 times on 4 days rest. Or is that, yeah, 3 times on 4 days rest. And Ben Brown would pitch twice on 5 days rest and once on 4 days rest. So there are still, even with that, with even if they ran with a 4-man rotation through May 2nd, they would still have guys pitching 7 times on 5 days rest, and was it 1, 2, 4, 7, 8 times. So yeah, 7 times on 5 days rest and 8 times on 4 days rest. It's possible. It's possible to kind of run this out a little bit longer if it's not a minimum stint and not be needing a fifth starter and obviously not pushing a guy to pitch on short rest. It's possible. It remains to be seen what Craig Counsell wants to do with his pitching staff and with his rotation. But it is possible to get a little further out than what a minimum stint would be and still have just that 4-man rotation going. So we'll see. We'll keep monitoring that and see what Counsell decides to do. Again, we still need to figure out where that fifth starter is going to come in, slot in on this road trip. But we'll keep monitoring that. But I do want to talk about the rest of the rotation real quick. I mean, Shota Imanaga had a rough start on Wednesday, had 5 innings pitched, 5 runs allowed, maybe 1 or 2 wind-aided home runs in Wrigley Field. But so he went from a 0.98 ERA to a 2.70 ERA, still a really good mark. And I think you're not going to have Shota go and throw even a quality start every start, right? It's going to be tough. It would have been tough for him to do that regardless. But you're kind of expecting there to just be, you can have bad days. You can, as long as the rest of the team is able to pick you up on some of those days. Like not every guy's going to have great days. Guys are going to have bad days, and you just kind of weather that storm. But Shota still had a really good, really strong start to his second year with the Cubs, second year in Major League Baseball. And he's going to be leading the way, obviously. Matthew Boyd has given up no runs over 11 innings pitched. He's also struck out 10 while only walking 4. Pretty strong showing for him in his first 2 starts. Again, he starts Friday in Los Angeles, so that'll be start number 3. But a pretty strong showing for a guy who missed most of last season due to injury. and coming in here and getting a 2-year deal. He's looked pretty good for the Cubs so far to start the year. Ben Brown, remember he didn't pitch last year. Last year he debuted and kind of came up when Steele went down on opening day, took his spot in the rotation, bounced a little bit between the bullpen and starting, and then he didn't pitch again after June 8th because of that neck injury. That honestly I'm still a little bit confused on how to word it and exactly what it was. But he hasn't had the strongest start to the year on Sunday against the Padres. Pitched 4 innings, gave up 5 runs. He so far has a 7.71 ERA, which isn't great, obviously, but he does have 15 strikeouts and 11 and 2/3 innings pitched. So that's a good number. A guy that we've talked about brings more swing and miss, more whiffs, probably more strikeouts than what else they have in the rotation. So it's a good number for him right now, and I think you can give him a little bit of grace here, where he's still kind of honestly, he's still kind of getting his feet wet at the big league level, especially as a starter. You don't want to go out and have bad starts every time. Of course, if you're Ben Brown and if you're the Cubs, you don't want to see that. So you do, especially in this stretch without Steele, like they need all the starters to step up, Ben Brown included. But I think there can be a little bit of grace for a guy who's still very early on in his major league career, but you see the flashes of what he can be if he reaches the ceiling, and so they're going to keep running with him while they can right now, and go from there. And then Brown pitches Saturday, tough lineup, but maybe he comes out and shows you something, especially a few days after Steele goes on the IL, and kind of shows you like, okay, there's another solid guy in this rotation that's going to help the Cubs lead that's going to help the Cubs go through this storm or weather this storm while Steele's out. But then obviously Jameson Tyone, after he had 4 1/3 innings, 6 runs allowed with 2 home runs on March 29th in Arizona, he's thrown back-to-back quality starts. He's looked a lot. Like, there's the one thing that stands out to me is his 29.4% whiff rate that he has, which is almost in 2024 was 19.5%, and 2023 was about 22%. Like, this 29.4% whiff rate would be the highest of his career. And so that's a very positive sign to see for Tyone, that he's just missing more bats than he has, and especially in his time with the Cubs. That's huge. And if he can kind of keep things even to that kind of level, like, you're going to see him start to rack up more strikeouts. I don't have a number. I didn't write down the number in front of me, but he's got a good amount of strikeouts compared to the innings he's pitched and the games he's pitched. The whiff rate's going to help him that. And another thing to monitor is if he can possibly hold that up and hold that higher whiff rate than what we've seen in a Cubs uniform. It's a very positive development for him, and just going to have to see if that lasts, because that could be huge for him. Before we go, and I do want to talk about what the Cubs have coming up next on their schedule. The Cubs did designate Caleb Killian for assignment today, and that just kind of had me thinking about the Cubs 2021 trade deadline sell-off and where things stand going on 4 years now. We're not quite at 4 years. That would be in July. But it did have me thinking about where the Cubs stand with what they got back in some of those trades. So obviously the Caleb Killian trade was the Cubs trading Chris Bryant to San Francisco for Alexander Canario and Caleb Killian. Both have played for the Cubs sparingly. Caleb Killian, he at one point was the Cubs' best pitching prospect in their system and had a lot of hype coming up. I want to say that was 2022 when he debuted. Had a lot of hype coming up. Both of those guys were DFA'd. Canario was DFA'd a little bit before the season started. I think it was late February when that happened. But now Caleb Killian today. So Chris Bryant trade, the return just didn't turn into anything for the Cubs. Both those guys have been DFA'd. Canario, I don't remember exactly where he is now, but he is not in the Cubs organization anymore. We'll see what happens with Caleb Killian going forward, if he is outrighted to Iowa or if another team, he ends up with another organization. We'll see. But the Chris Bryant trade at this point, it wasn't a win. We'll say that. It wasn't a win for the Cubs now that those two guys have both been DFA'd. The Javier Baez trade, it was I think Trevor Williams was also part of that. has it brought back Pete Crow Armstrong, right? A guy that I believe was drafted the year before out of high school. He's still so young, but PCA has, I mean, he's for one, he looks like a Gold Glove defender out there. Like it looks like a guy that's going to win multiple Gold Gloves in center field for the Cubs. He wreaks havoc on the base paths when he gets on. Like he's one of those guys I mentioned earlier that's going and beating throws at second base, routine throws, routine force outs at second base, and extending innings. He's stealing bases first to third, scoring from first on a double, scoring from second on a single. Like he's a guy that does all those things really well. He's not hitting that well right now, but we have seen when he is able to get on base that he can cause havoc and cause problems for other teams. And again, the Gold Glove caliber defense gives immense value to this team, regardless of the bat. So that I would say is a major positive right now for the Cubs. Obviously, again, young in his career, and we'll see where things go for him. But looks like a pretty big win for the Cubs at the moment. The Anthony Rizzo trade netted Kevin Alcantara and Alexander Vizcaino from the New York Yankees. Kevin Alcantara, so far, he is a top 100 prospect. He's 86th, the number 86th prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. He did debut last year. He's grown into, again, a top prospect, one of the top prospects in the Cubs system. And whether he ends up playing for the Cubs or is used as a pretty big trade chip for the Cubs at some point, like he's looking like one of those guys where it hasn't, you can't say it's a win yet. You can't say it's a win yet because he only just debuted at the end of September last year. He hasn't carved out a big major league career for the Cubs or turned into a trade asset that brings in someone big that the Cubs need at the trade deadline or something, right? This year, right? Like that hasn't happened yet. He's still in the minor leagues and still playing for Iowa, but he is a top 100 prospect, and at least right now, it looks like he's on track to be a win as far as the return goes. Obviously, Alexander Vizcaino, he went on the restricted list. I want to say that was spring 2022. It looks like he played for the Dominican Winter League from that 2023-2024 Dominican season, but he hasn't pitched in an MLB game since, or he hasn't, or I think he hasn't pitched in a minor league game for a minor league affiliate since the Cubs put him on the restricted list. So don't know where he's at. I mean, I remember that being a thing where like just kind of wondering where Vizcaino was when it came to spring training and then getting put on the restricted list 3 years ago. And so that part of it is not a win, obviously, but Kevin Alcantara could turn this trade into a win for the Cubs. And just that remains to be seen. But right now it's looking like that's the direction things are going. And then the Craig Kimbrell trade from right around that same time when everyone else was traded, that he went to the White Sox and the Cubs got Nick Madrigal and Cody Hoyer in return. Cody Hoyer, he hasn't pitched in a major league game since 2021. Remember, he had Tommy John in March 2022. And then there was the next year, 2023, was on a rehab assignment, I believe. And I don't remember the injury, but got hurt again. And that was another season-ending thing. I don't know what organization he's with right now. He was non-tender by the Cubs in 2023 after the 2023 season. And I guess, he hasn't pitched in a major league game since. And then Nick Madrigal, who played a lot for the Cubs over the last few seasons, even tried his hand at third base the last couple of years with the Cubs, but just didn't hit at the major league level, just didn't perform all that well at the major league level, and also dealt with his fair share of injuries, a few where he was out for months at a time. Last season, I want to say he got hit in the hand, and that might have been a season-ending injury for him, if I'm not mistaken. So dealt with a lot of injuries with the Cubs, or a lot of time on the injured list with the Cubs, and then he was non-tendered this offseason. So that Craig Kimbrell trade, on the Cubs side at least, is another one that's just not a win. So the thing with those kind of trades, especially when it's guys that are going to be free agents in the offseason, like rental pieces, like it's going to be tough to get big hauls, and you're not going to win every single trade that you do. The Cubs obviously made a bunch of other trades that July, and I don't think it netted them a ton. A Yu Darvish trade happened the previous offseason, and they did get Owen Casey in that deal. So, like, That's another guy where it looks like it could be on track to at least be a pretty good trade for the Cubs, and as far as what they got in return. PCA one, the Javi Baez and Trevor Williams for Pete Armstrong trade right now is the best one the Cubs got in that deal. It's the best any of those trades have worked out so far for the Cubs, and we'll see how his major league career goes. But it looks like, as far as value goes, there's a pretty high floor for PCA just from the defense. Like he can be a serviceable player at the major league level just based on his defense. And then if the bat can also catch up and he could be a positive hitter, like you're looking at a pretty good player, all-star kind of caliber player for the Cubs, and that would be a big win in that Javier Baez trade. So that was just I just kind of wanted to look at where the Cubs are now going on 4 years later since that trade deadline sell off, and where the returns for those trades are. A few just didn't work out for the Cubs, but there's two in PCA and Kevin Alcantara that look like could work out pretty well for the Cubs, and Jed Hoyer made the right deal. So remains to be seen. Obviously, still early as far as their careers go, but we'll keep monitoring that as we go forward. And so to wrap things up, quick preview of the next road trip, the next 6 games. The Cubs have 3 in Los Angeles against the Dodgers, and then 3 more in San Diego against the Padres, who they did just take 2 of 3 against at Wrigley Field, but they are on the road. Dodger Stadium is going to be a tough place to play. San Diego is probably going to be a tough place to play. Those are 2 really good teams, 2 teams you're looking at like as playoff teams going into this season. So another stretch here in this tough April that the Cubs have where they're going to be tested. Just looking at this series against the Dodgers coming up, Friday, you got, as I mentioned before, Matthew Boyd going up against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Saturday, you got Ben Brown going up against Roki Sasaki. And Sunday, to be announced, but they are going up against Tyler Glasnow. So 3 really good pitchers for the Dodgers. Of course, Roki Sasaki's still early on in his major league career. He's young, still from when he was coming from Japan, was still kind of thought of as maybe a little bit of a work in progress in a way, but he has the potential. Like from everything you hear, he has one of the best pitchers in baseball type of potential. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, same way. Tyler Glasnow has dealt with injuries in his career, but when he is healthy, has been a really, really good pitcher. So the Cubs are going to get tested here. It may be nicer that they're going to some warm weather cities as far as offense goes, even though the offense has been good even in this last homestand. Are going to some warmer weather. Maybe the offense gets going. We'll see how the starting pitching does. The bullpen still has question marks, but we'll see if they can help out this rotation, right? The rotation is going to need some help here moving forward. We'll see if the bullpen can step up and also help them out and just back them up well. But yeah, going to be a tough road trip for the Cubs. We'll see where they're at the end of that road trip. But again, on Thursday, I'm recording on Thursday. They are 9-6, first in the National League Central. A pretty good start to the Cubs season, a start that you needed to see from the Cubs in this tough April stretch of games. And we'll see where things go from here. But so far, good, coming off a good homestand, coming off a good first 15 games of the year, as the Cubs look to make the playoffs in 2025, get back to the postseason, end their few-year drought from the postseason. And that's still a long way away. Still a little over 90% of the season left, but that's where we're looking. So again, good start from the Cubs, but they need to keep that going as they hit the West Coast to face the Dodgers and the Padres. That's it for today. Again, I am Ryan Herrera, your host on this Addison to 35th podcast. My guy Herb Lawrence will have some Sox content coming up if you're on the Sox side. But this is a Cubs episode. I'll have another Cubs episode coming up soon, recapping some more Cubs baseball. But until then, have a great one. We will talk to you later.